Welcome to a macro view, where we take an in-depth look at Roll20 macros and break them down in an attempt to make you a better macro maker. Thanks for joining me. My name is Jim. Let's get started. Welcome to the channel, everybody. This video is entitled, What is a macro actually doing? So we are not going to teach you how to do a basic macro. What I want you to understand is how a macro is working. And when you make calls from your macro to the character sheet, how it's doing. Now we're going to build, various easy macros, but it's so that you understand how it works. So a macro uses a character sheet information and uses what I like to call a stat call from a sheet. And so if you look at a character sheet, this is Skiki, and this is a D&D 5e character sheet. You can see there's tons of information on here. There's abilities, ability modifiers, skill checks, saving throws, armor class. There's other resources. And not only are there information on this sheet, but if you go to the character settings page, there are other information on here as well. And so what we like to do is, let's say you get an item that adds 2 to your strength, and you could come over here and change Skiki's strength to 14. That works, but what we would rather do is come over here and we change this bonus to a 2, so that when you go back to the core, you can see that it's blue, so it was modified by something, whether it's a feature, a feat, or an item. It was a 12, and so it's now a 14 based on a modification. And if you go over here, you'll see that it was modified by 2. So these stats, there's save options, modifications you make to skill checks, all this kind of stuff. So Roll20 is great in that it does help you if you're trying to find out from a character sheet what particular stat you're trying to call by. It doesn't work for all the stats, but it works for a lot of them. If you hover over it, it tells you what the stat is. It's strength bonus. These are wisdom save mod. This is a history flat. I'm not sure why they call it that, but these are all flats. And then if you go back to core, you can see that this is strength mod. If you hover over this is a strength save bonus. This is a deception bonus. And so those are the stats that you want to recall. So to use those in a macro, to make a stat call, you're always going to start with an @ sign and a brace. And then you can use the name of the character, a pipe, and then what stat you want to recall. So in this case, let's say it's dexterity _mod, which in this case, Skiki's dexterity mod is a 3. So if I run this just all by itself, and I come over here and I run this, sure enough, we get a 3 right here. And so that's how you refer to any stat on a character sheet. If you hover over it, it'll tell you what the stat is. If not, you may have to get creative. Like, for instance, there are spells that use, if you go to spells, they use spell save DCs, spell attack bonus. And if you hover over it, this doesn't give you the information. But in this case, it's spell _save _DC, and this is spell _attack _bonus. So that takes a little bit. Let's go back to core. The other way to refer to it is selected. So you're either going to have a character's name. If it's specifically for that character, you're never going to use it for anybody else. You would use the name. Or if you use this and you try to run this without selecting a token, let's put this down, you'll get an error. Oh, there's somebody selected. there's no one selected, I get an error. It says you haven't selected the token. So if I select Skiki and I run this, their dexterity modifier is a 3. If I do it for Kiara and run it, hers is a 2. Rin's is a 5. Zrager's is a 2. And Aru, because I'm clicking on them, is a 3. So those are the two ways you can refer to which character or which player you want the information returned. So basically what you're doing is you're telling the system in this, by using an @ sign and braces, I want Skiki's dexterity modifier returned to this macro, and it will return whatever the value is for that in the character sheet. So let's look at some examples. So I use the default template all the time solely. I've used other templates, NPC action, NPC attack. There's some other ones, but I've spent so much time on the default template, and I've never been able to get the other ones to work like I can with this. So this one is fairly easy to understand once you understand how it's built. So anytime, every macro is going to start with ampersand brace template : default. Just like that. And basically the default template builds a table, and it gives it a title bar, and that's where your name goes, and then whatever number of rows you want. And each row is contained in double braces. So it's always going to start with the name equals, let's call it test macro brace. So that's the very first row. And the name is going to be in a purple bar, and it's going to give you the name. Then if you want more rows, we go row 1. Then we're going to copy this. Let's do 4 rows. Okay, so 4, you don't have to do 4 rows. You can do 1 row if you want. Or actually 2, because the first is the title. 1, 2, oops. 3. Okay, so now if I run this, there you go. Test macro, that's the name. And then row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. Now you never use a macro like this with row 4, with the 4 rows in it. What you're going to do is populate these rows with information. So one thing I really don't like about macros in Roll20 is that they don't ignore white space. And so this would be a much easier way to build a macro, because it just makes more sense. Each row is on its own row, and then you can put the information in. But if you try to run this, it won't work. See, it just shows you the information. It doesn't actually build the table from the default. You have to put it all back together into a block for it to run. So I don't really build them that way unless it's really complicated. But in this case, we're going to just leave it together. So let's say we want, you can put static information, or you can put, rolling information. So let's say you want to just put, let's say it's a spell and the target gets knocked prone in row 1. We run that. So then basically that's just information. And if it's too long, comma, etc., it will wrap automatically. It wasn't long enough, etc., comma, etc. It'll wrap for you in that row. So the next thing we want to do is you could have the system do a roll for you, or you could retrieve somebody's information, stat call. So let's just do a roll first. So any roll the system you want to do is contained in double brackets, not braces, brackets. So we want to roll a 1 die 20. Okay, so now it's just going to roll a 1 die 20. Run that. Okay. Now if you hover over, anytime there's a box with a roll in it, you can hover over it and it'll tell you that it's rolling a 1 die 20. On the left side of the equal sign is what it's going to roll or what it's going to add together. And on the right side is what it actually rolled. So it's going to roll a 1 die 20 and it actually rolled a 13. So it's really helpful to be able to see the rolls that way. So now let's say we want to add some information to it. So within the double brackets, let's do this just so we understand. So the braces are the row and the roll is in the brackets. So let's add a 2d6 and we'll run that. So if you look at this, it's going to roll a 1 die 20 plus a 2 die 6. So it rolled an 18. And then it rolled 2 die 6, a 3 and a 6, and added them all up and gave a resulted in a 27. Now the box is green because that means at least one of the rolls was a maximum value. That doesn't mean that it's a 20 on a 20. It could be. But it's a 10 on a 10, an 8 on an 8, a 6 on a 6, a 4 on a 4. It just means it rolled a maximum value on one of the dice. It could also be red if it rolled a 1, which is always the minimum value. And if you roll, let's say you're rolling 3 die 6 and you roll a 6, a 3, and a 1, the box will be blue because you've rolled a maximum value of 6 and a minimum value of 1. So those are the 3 colors that can show up in the box. Okay, now let's add a stat call to it. Okay, so we're going to go plus at brace because we're going to use a stat call. Let's just use this. So now here is the stat call right here, just like we used before, right here, down below. At Skeeky Dex Dodge modifier. So what you're telling the system is that I'm going to roll a 1 die 20 and a 2 die 6, add them together, and then add Skeeky's dexterity modifier, which in this case is a 3 because we already looked at it before. And let's see what happens. Oh, I always do that. The brackets have to go all the way around. So remember, the roll everything that you want rolled has to be contained in the double brackets. So now let's run this. Let's look at it. So it's rolling a 1 die 20. It's going to roll 2 die 6. And then it adds 3 to that because that 3 is Skeeky's dexterity modifier. So it rolled a 14, rolled a 4 and a 6 for your die 6s, and it added 3 to it for a result of 27. So that's how you refer to information like that. So let's say we want to do another information on row 3. And let's say we want to do how about a DC saving bonus? So let's say Skeeky casts a spell and the target has to make a saving throw. Let's say a dexterity saving throw. And you're going to use Skeeky's spell save DC, which is contained on their spell sheet. If you go to spells, that's their spell save DC and their spell attack bonus. Both are used in the macros that we use. So let's go DC, and then we're going to use a stat call, and we're going to say at brace Skeeky pipe spell underscore save underscore DC dexterity save. So let's see how that works. So here's the stat call to the character sheet. It's going to pull back Skeeky's spell save DC And then these concatenate the text onto it. So let's see what it looks like. So this is a DC 18 dexterity save. So they have to make a dexterity save, and the DC is 18 based on Skiki's spell save DC. So that's how they refer to that. And that's basically how macros work. They are basically information, either static information or stat calls to character sheets, and you can put them all in their own line. You can have a very simple macro if you wanted. You can have one row if you want. Target gets knocked prone, or you could do a roll there. Instead of a target, you could do rolling a, and then a bracket, 1 die 10. And you could run just that. And you have one row. Oh, I didn't put the rolling a. There we go. I had extra brackets there. Rolling 1 die 10. So that's how easy it can be. Obviously, a lot of the macros we do are going to be much more complicated than this. But hopefully that gives you an understanding of what a macro is actually doing. And so that's how we build them. And then we're going to dive into next macro. We're going to start looking at specific macros. So I look forward to it. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you on the next one.